everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over the Elvie pump and the Willow Gen 3 or 3.0. This will be a side-by-side comparison. I have separate videos of reviews for each pump individually, which you can check out on my channel, but this one is specifically going to be comparing the two pumps. So I'm going to be covering quite a lot here. I'm going to go over the differences in the profiles, the flange shapes, the different milk storage options, the actual pieces, cleaning differences, the chargers, the different apps, and then also the suction and my recommendation on what I think would work best depending on what pump you currently use. So let's just dive right in. So again, I mentioned that I already did separate videos on just the Elvie and just the Willow Gen 3, as well as unboxings. So I'm not going to go too into deep depth on some of the terminology of this other stuff. But the biggest thing I always get is the difference in like what the pump physically looks like. So the Elvie pump, I'll just say right off the bat, is slimmer. It's much slimmer than the Willow Gen 3 or any of the Willows, like by far. I haven't taken an actual like tape measure to it, but if I had to guess, the Elvie is probably, I don't know, maybe like 3 inches, and the Willow is probably like 4.5, 5. So if you're a small chested lady, you might be okay with either pump. Postpartum, I'm rocking like a 36, 38 double D. So either one of these pumps is going to be extremely noticeable. I will say that when wearing the Elvie pump, I felt comfortable grocery shopping, talking to family at family functions, and truthfully, it didn't really feel like anybody knew what was going on, with the exception of being in a quiet room. So the way that the Elvie pump is designed and the way that the milk is collected down into a bottle, kind of similar to a traditional pump, it makes this like dripping noise where it's literally like plop, plop, plop. So when the bottle is pretty empty, and I mean, until you get to like maybe 3 ounces, it's a loud sound. I mean, you can definitely hear the milk like entering into the container. That is not an issue that you have with the Willow Gen 3 or any of the Willow pumps at all. So yes, that's the side-by-side. I mean, the profile, they're very different. The Elvie is much more of like a smooth, rounded profile, and the Willow pump is like a full-on extra boob inside of your bra. So the reason for that is the milk containers, and I'll get into that in a minute. But to go into something first is the flange shape. So the biggest difference I think between the Elvie and the Willow 3.0 is the difference between the flanges. If you are already pumping, or if you have seen a breast pump before in your life, you are probably very familiar with things that look like this. So whether you're using a Spectra pump or you're using a Medela pump, the flanges all look the same. It's a cone with a tube. That's what it is. So these are familiar. When I first got the Elvie, I was kind of surprised. So this is the flange. I'll take this off. While it does have a tube, obviously, the actual shape of it is really flat. And this helps in the profile of the Elvie pump significantly because of how flat one of the many things I don't love about the Elvie pump is getting in it. There we go. So it's really flat, but it's bizarre because the flange shape itself, I don't know, it's just not like a traditional flange. So this is the Willow flange taken out of the container itself. If you notice, it's a much more traditional shape. So it's very similar to what like a Spectra pump looks like, or honestly, even a Medela. So the flange shape is a little bit more natural, I'm gonna call it, from what I'm used to pumping with. So that is going to also make the depth of the pump much larger, which makes the profile larger, which makes your like Madonna cone boob situation that much larger. So yeah, it's just bizarre to me. I don't know. I don't love it. The other thing is that this Elvie plastic is like really hard. I'm kind of a germaphobe, and being able to boil all of my pump parts just makes me feel better. And you can't boil this. So straight from Elvie, they don't recommend that you boil the parts because they can warp and they can crack. And it's a known issue with the pump. It's not like I'm the only one. This is from them. So that's a little annoying to me that I can't like throw these into a pot of boiling water for 5 minutes and just sanitize them to ease my mind. So yeah, that's a downside to me. But what that leads me into the milk storage. So because, and sorry, I should back up. Currently, I use the reusable containers for the Willow 3.0. If you've done any kind of research, you know that the Willow uses these reusable, disposable bags. They're one-time use. But I actually find the reusable containers to be way easier to use, and I don't store in the Willow bags. I use the Kind system or Kindy system. I don't know how to pronounce it. So the reusable containers work better for me. So the way that the flange sits in, like so, but the milk is collected through here. It gets pumped up into the flex tube, and then the flex tube shoots it into this ring. So this ring actually fills up with milk. And then you empty it by opening up this container and you pour it out. Now, the Elvie pump is much more traditional in the sense that when you're pumping, the milk goes down and into a bottle. So you take the bottle off, you go about your day, you pour. At first glance, it may seem like the Elvie doesn't waste as much milk. I think that I've seen a lot of people that think that with the Willow pump, you waste milk because it gets stuck in the container, there's extra parts that it's going through, it's being pumped through another piece. But I have to disagree, and I don't think that's the case. With the Elvie pump, so you take off this piece, and it has a little pour spout, and then that's what you use to pour the milk into whatever container you will be using. Milk gets stuck all around here. So this pour spout, like I usually lose maybe 1/4 of an ounce just into the container itself. And as an overproducer, I'm okay with that. But if you're a just enougher, that's could be a deal breaker. Versus the Willow pump, there's something called the flip to finish. So when you're done pumping, there's basically this maneuver that you do. So you finish pumping, you take it off, and you literally like flip it over. And what it's doing is it's taking all of the milk that was in the flange and it's pumping it back into the container. So by doing that, there really isn't any waste. And the way that they've designed the spout, I just don't really have that issue. So the two different containers are very, very different. So the way that they're pumping milk is what makes the profiles so different on both pumps. Again, with the Willow, I tend to use the reusable containers, but I have used the bags, and they're great. You can literally like bend over. You're not having to worry about them leaking, and they are truly leak proof. Like when there is milk in this, like it's not coming out. It's just kind of wasteful to me, and I don't need them. So again, I have to side with the Willow when it comes to the actual containers. 2 Elvies, I guess, Pro, they do give you extra bottles. So the actual Elvie pump itself comes with 4 bottles, and with the Willow, everything is extra. Like everything. So the milk containers themselves you have to buy separately. If you want a different flange size, you have to buy that separately. The bags are separate. Like all of it is an additional cost, where I will give it to Elvie. They give you a lot. They give you 2 different flange sizes. They give you extra spare parts, they give you extra bottles, all of it. But that's the different milk storages. So that then leads me into the different pieces of the pump. Between the Elvie and the Willow Gen 3, I think that the Willow is easier to maintain because it truly, to me, has less parts. So there's the hub itself, there is the container, there is the flex tube, and there is the flange. That's it. It's just like these 4 pieces. This is easier for me to clean personally. I like that I'm allowed to put it in boiling water and sanitize it. With the Elvie, you've got the hub itself, you've got the bottle, you have, I don't even know what this is called, it's like a valve. You've got the top of this, you've got the bottle, you have the flange, and you have the rubber disc. I'm not going to go too deep into it. You can watch my Elvie review specifically on why I don't like this little green disc. But it's another piece, and it's just another part that has to be perfectly aligned for the Elvie to work to the best of its ability, I will just say. So, which leads me into cleaning. There's just far less pieces to clean with the Willow Gen 3. And there's just a bunch more tiny little pieces to have to deal with the Elvie. And the other thing that's a little bit odd to me is that with the Elvie and cleaning, like, there's just so many more nooks and crannies that need to be cleaned that the milk actually comes in contact with. So with the Willow Gen 3, milk never touches any part of the hub. There's the motor inside that's moving everything, but it never actually makes contact with the milk. Versus the Elvie, like, this piece makes contact with the milk. I mean, you can see there's dried milk in there. Which, I don't know, again, from like a sanitary piece is concerning to me, but, you know, it still does its job. The next thing is the chargers. So this is where Willow gets a little bit of a ding, is the fact that they only supply one charger for the 2 hubs. So you have to wait until one hub is fully charged before you can start charging the next one. And on top of that, it's not even like it's a charger you have laying around your house. It is a charger very specifically made for the Willow pump. Like, I mean, I'm sure that you can buy whatever, you know, voltage AC DC this is, like, but Willow sells an additional one for $25. So that's frustrating to me. Whereas the Elvie is just charged off of a USB. So included in the Elvie pump are 2 USB cords. The only downside is that they don't actually include like the little cubes or the like the USB to wall adapter. They don't give you that. So in the manual, it actually suggests that you plug it into your computer, which, I don't know, that's kind of crazy to me. I've never plugged it into my computer before. I have a desk that has a couple of USB outlets, and I use that. But I can charge both hubs at the same time. So that is a huge convenience. With that being said, the Elvie pump, I maybe get 2 good pumps out of it, and the second pump is like borderlining on the battery running out. I've never even come close with the Willow. I've done like 3, 4, 5 pumps with the Willow and still had battery left. So the charge on these guys is, in my opinion, much, much better than the charge or whatever battery that the Elvie has. And that's just my personal opinion. And I think I usually pump anywhere from, it depends. I would say with the Elvie pump, I was having to pump about 45 minutes to get half of my normal output. Again, watch the Elvie review specifically for that. And with the Willow Gen 3, I only have to pump for maybe 25 minutes. So that can also probably affect the battery life. But again, so 4 to 5 pumps, maybe 2 pumps. The mobile apps for both of them, truthfully, they both kind of suck. I don't think they're that great. I don't really use them anymore. With the Elvie, you want to use it because you can't see how much milk is being collected. So that's a frustrating thing. So when you have this attached to you, you can't like peek in and see how much milk you have. So you're kind of relying on the app to tell you how much you've pumped. And if it was accurate, it wouldn't be a problem. But it's not, ever. So they're just both clunky, honestly. Both apps are not great. I don't really love either one of them. Truthfully, the only thing that I would really use them for is to keep track of like when the last time was that I pumped. Like I would forget, oh God, was that 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago? Not sure. So the app was good for that. Beyond that, they're not great. Pro for the Elvie app, you can manually adjust the amount collected. So if it thinks that you collected 3 ounces, but you actually only collected 1.5 ounces, you can manually adjust that to properly reflect how much you actually pumped. The Willow Gen 3, you cannot adjust that in it. Like it says you pumped 4 ounces, that's what's being recorded. But in its defense, I've never had it be wrong. I think in total, maybe it's been off by like 1/4 ounce sometimes. And that was a rare occasion. So it's much more accurate as far as the milk that's coming out of it. One of the other questions I get all the time is the suction. Willow has a reputation of being a little bit rougher than the Elvie pump, and I cannot speak to the previous models, the 1.0 or the 2.0, I don't know. So the Gen 3 though, I don't think it's aggressive. I will say between the Elvie pump and the Willow pump, the Willow has a better suction. And my definition of better is stronger. Even on Elvie's highest setting, I just constantly felt like there wasn't anything happening. It was not able to stimulate a letdown for me personally. My body just never really adapted to the pump, so I just wasn't getting as much as I could. With the Willow Gen 3, I would definitely compare it closer to a Medela pump. Honestly, even a Spectra. I don't know that it's really that different from either the Medela or the Spectra pumps. I use a Medela Sonata, so that suction is different than like your standard insurance pump and style advanced, but I really don't think that it's that different. It is as strong as it needs to be. I don't think it's anything more than that. It's definitely not like overly aggressive. Versus the Elvie is a very gentle pull. So I think it's a personal preference. I originally purchased the Elvie because I was scared of the suction capabilities of the Willow, and it didn't work out well for me personally. But I know people that have had amazing success with the Elvie, and at the end of the day, everybody's bodies respond differently. I think that if you get great output from your Medela, you're probably going to get really great output from the Willow Gen 3. If you are using your pumps on like a very, very minimum setting and that is like painful to you, you might want to go with the Elvie. It's definitely like a lesser suction. So it really depends on you. Again, I would compare the Willow much closer to a Medela pump than anything else. I don't think it's super different than the Spectra, other than it doesn't have like that kind of like flutter. And unless you've used a Spectra pump, like you won't know what that means. But if you have, you do know what it means. So that's my recommendation. If you get great output from a Medela pump, you're probably going to get great output with the Willow Gen 3. If you don't get great output with the Medela, like maybe you're using like an Amita Purely Yours, or maybe like the Baby Buddha. I'm trying to think of another pump. I guess anything besides a Medela or a Spectra, then the Elvie will probably work really well for you. But just personally, I definitely prefer the suction of the Willow. So that was a ton of information. I'm sure I overloaded you, but I was trying to get it all into one video, and not be too biased. Obviously, as you can tell, I definitely prefer the Willow Gen 3 over the Elvie pump for a few different reasons. But again, breast pumps are going to work differently for different women, and at the end of the day, like, you won't truly know until you know. But as far as ease of cleaning, the flange shape, charging, I mean, all of the things that I can kind of check off, like, even before I started nursing, I probably would have chosen the Willow Gen 3. But that's my opinion. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to comment below, and I will try to answer whatever I can. Thank you guys so much.